the record on or not yet? It's just started. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Niall, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And in these strange times, it's very nice to have a friendly invitation like this. And I'd really just like to start by saying that the Brent Knoll Community Benefit Shop is hugely grateful to both the officers of the Parish Council and the entire Parish Council for the support, encouragement, practical advice, and all sorts of support that has been on offer from the very beginning. I'm going to be brief and say that this all started about a year ago when there were a number of members of the community who were concerned that Caroline Chanel was going to be closing her shop. And a survey was done to see whether there was or would be interest in having a community shop to replace the village shop. And there was a very large number, over 90 people, who responded and said, yes, they would be interested. They would be interested in being involved in a variety of ways, in volunteering, in helping potentially, in putting some finance into it, and so forth. And part of that survey also questioned people's support for continuing to have a post office. And there was, again, very large support for that function remaining available in the village of Brent Knoll. Now, I would have to say that at the time, my own thoughts were somewhat skeptical, thinking that, well, gosh, if it hasn't been easy to make this shop viable up till now, how is it going to work with a bunch of amateurs running it? And I got involved somewhat by default when two of the other officers of the Parish Council resigned from the steering group because of the fact that it was their view that there couldn't be too close an association between the Parish Council and this community benefit venture. And so I was brought in to make up the numbers. And for a variety of reasons, I've ended up now as the chair. And I would say now that my professional experience, I'm a psychogeriatrician, and I've always been aware that relationships in life are key. Now, if there's one thing that I think all of us have become even more acutely aware of during the COVID crisis, which is when this shop then was born as a community venture, it is that relationships are absolutely vital. So this shop is not just about keeping available within walking distance for those who don't have transport, and because there is no public transport. It's not just having a place they can buy essentials. It is also about having a hub, a place where people can come, have a chat, meet, associate with each other, and actually engage in community relationships. And I have to say that my own view about the relevance, the importance of this shop as a community hub has radically altered through my involvement. It has been started within 2 weeks of the first lockdown. It has been run entirely by volunteers. People have been tireless in giving their time, their energies, running around, getting supplies, learning how to use an electronic till, learning where good local supplies can be obtained without huge expense, having further community engagement events to find out what people want of the shop, and at the same time managing a modest turnover. Now, I think that is a relevant factor, that the turnover is currently substantially less than what it was when Caroline was running it, but in its defense, it has only been open for most of the lockdown period for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's now longer than that, and we are expecting that turnover will increase. We are also on the brink of advertising to employ somebody, again, a very modest 12 hours a week, to be the manager of the shop and to coordinate the volunteers, to coordinate the buying, the purchasing, and the pricing, and those sorts of issues. We are registered with the Plunkett Foundation as a community benefit society. So it's a not-for-profit organization which is akin to a charity but has different status. We are still entirely dependent on the goodwill of the parish council for offering us the use of your bank account, because along with many other charities, it has proven still impossible to get the bank to respond. They make the excuse of money or anti-money laundering for not being quick with responses to open bank accounts, but we've had the application with them for many weeks, so we're currently still using your account. It is our intention and our aspiration, having done a fairly comprehensive option appraisal of where we should run in the long term, it is our aspiration to be in a position to take over the village shop from Caroline. And Bob is very well aware of the current issues as to whether that will or will not prove possible. But we remain optimistic. And we are hugely grateful and humbled by the initial suggestion from the parish council that you too may be able and willing to be involved in this in a financial way to assist us with getting our act to start off. There will then subsequently be a point where we will have a public meeting, a public share offering. And this is another aspect of the way the Plunkett Foundation advises us to act to ensure maximal public involvement. Shares will be offered, which we haven't yet determined exactly the cost of the shares, but people will be invited to put their hands in their pockets to buy into this community shop, community hub, hopefully community post office. We do hope that that will be possible to re-engage with as well. So I think that's probably enough from me, but happy to answer questions. One last thing, which is to say that particularly as some of our current volunteers are laid up ill, one in hospital, we are doing another round of recruiting for volunteers. So if anyone knows of anybody locally who would be interested in being involved in whatever capacity, a couple of hours a day, 1 day a week or whatever, to act as a volunteer in the shop, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you, Niall. Are there any questions that, obviously we had a long debate on this in our last meeting, and we came up with a variety of things that we needed to do as a parish council, but I think you've got an ideal opportunity to voice some of those concerns to Niall this evening, and I think it's been very interesting. They're obviously very committed. They've got some good advice from the Plunkett Foundation, but are there any questions you want to ask of Niall this evening? Any takers? My only question, Niall, was, and I think, could you just update us on one of the concerns we had was your business plan. Can you update us on where you are with this, and will there be a business plan?
Oh, there definitely will be. The only justifiable reason for its delay so far has been the uncertainty as to where the business will be run from. But it is being drafted by David Sturgis. Currently, he has promised it to the steering group last night within the next 2 to 3 days. The business plan will also have an action plan. And we are under pressure from the Plunkett Foundation as well to produce this. Owen has very helpfully also produced draft expenditure forecasts, income and expenditure forecasts and so forth. And we will be gratefully taking up his offer of guidance and assistance, because I mean, bear in mind that I think perhaps the other reason why our turnover figures are still low is that this has started in lockdown. It has been run by a group of amateurs. This is acknowledged to be a very difficult territory, running a corner shop for experts, for people who've spent a lifetime at it. So I think that in the circumstances, our turnover today, which is sort of annualized forecast of a modest 50,000 a year, which we would expect to ramp up quite quickly. Certainly within 6 months, we would like to see that doubling that figure with longer opening hours, with again, once we have a shop manager, we would like to be in a position to apply for a license to sell alcohol. And it's interesting that our liaison with a similar venture in Stokes and Gregory has suggested that they made at least 50% of their markup from alcohol sales. And whilst as a professional, I might have some concerns about that, I think as long as it's done responsibly, this is something we would like to add to our what we offer.
Thank you, Noel. Owen, you did a pretty in-depth analysis of from turnover and accounts and the bank statements. Are you happy that Niall uses that and distributes it to the rest of his group to help them with their...
I'm extremely happy. I mean, the one thing that, you know, I felt I could bring to the party was, you know, 30 years of retail management experience, and I thought that that may be of help to the group, and I'm very happy that any of that, or indeed any other information, should be shared amongst the other members of the steering group. Very happy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen.
Welcome it, certainly.
Thank you. Bob, is there any news at all that you want to relay to us now and Niall?
Yes, it was really just to update in terms of the premises availability. We obviously were talking with the mortgagor about whether they were happy to look at the shop being sold to the parish council if that was a feasible option. I had an email from them today basically saying that they have approved the fact that they would consider the sale of the shop to the parish council. That would be subject to independent valuation to ensure that they are seeing value for money. So they will need to get back to us from that, but in principle there is not an objection from the mortgage company to potentially selling the shop off separately from the dwelling, which might have been an issue.
Congratulations, that is a major breakthrough, and Bob, we are extraordinarily grateful to you for your endeavours on our joint behalf.
Thanks, Bob. Are there any other questions for Niall while we've got him? No? Niall, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for talking to us, and so that you can meet everyone else also from the parish council. But it's I think it's very good to meet you this evening and putting your case so clearly to the rest of us. But we wish you well, and obviously the important thing will be our side of it, and then your side now, particularly with your business plan and your fundraising. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Niall. See you soon. Bye. Okay. Owen, does anyone else wish to address us?
I haven't asked Bella if she wanted to say anything.
No,
hello, Bella.
Hello.
Okay. Hello, Bella.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, let's open our meeting then. Welcome, everyone. Apologies.
Yeah, we have apologies from Cynthia, who just had a cataract operation today and feeling a bit groggy. So her son rang me and said that she would prefer not to come tonight. It's very, very understandable, I guess. So yes, from Cynthia, and from Andrea and Warwick, who are busy doing some last minute pre-lockdown work on their business apparently. So,
okay.
So we've had 3 apologies.
Okay, those who I apologize, are you all happy that we accept them? Can you just signify in the usual manner? Thank you, well done. Declarations of interest. I don't think we've got any planning, have we?
No plan.
So,
No.
Bob, we're okay. Anything else on finance that concerns people? I don't think so. No.
Well,
Okay. You've had the minutes from the last meeting. Are you all happy that they are a record, a true record, and that you're happy for me to sign them? Yes. Thank you.
okay.
No planning.
No
Gosh,
plan.
this is good, isn't it? Excellent. Reports. Bob, district and county.
Chairman, yeah, just a couple of things. One, just in terms of declarations of interest, I think Owen's got the standard one for me being district and county councillor anyway, so that goes. In terms of county, just a couple of quick updates. Coronavirus update, as I gave you last month, the figures that we've been given as of the 1st of November are that the R in this area of Somerset is between 1.3 and 1.6. For some reason, and no one seems to know quite why, Sedgemoor is the highest of the areas within Somerset. On the sort of cases per 100,000, the average for Somerset as a whole is in the mid 60s. Sedgemoor is actually 95 as of the end of the last week. So we are but clearly the highest figure in Somerset. And as I say, we have asked to see if there's any reason that they can identify as to a particular area of infection, but that hasn't been able to be identified. So it is just a question of being careful. And you'll all have seen recently within the local papers and local news reports that various shops and pubs have had to shut down for odd cases being identified there. So that is being monitored and it is being dealt with. Obviously the lockdown kicks in as of tomorrow. On the more reassuring front, the figure I've given you before about the average mortality figures for the year, we're being told we're actually 17% below the 5-year average this year compared with those years. So although there have been some cases here locally, there's not the sort of spikes that we've obviously seen elsewhere in the country. There is, on a similar vein, a COVID-19 survey that's being done by the County Council at the moment through the somerset.gov.uk website. If members can have a look at it, it's worth doing. It's basically getting some feedback as to how people have been impacted by the lockdown and by the virus as a whole. And it's really a way of the county trying to pick up on if there are any particular things that are hitting the community that they ought to be looking at to be dealing with. So that, as I say, is an online survey. On completely different matters, we're at the winter gritting time of the year again, so the gritters are now out and about as and when they need to be for the weather. There's a fleet of 23 gritters, and what the county are doing is this year they're maintaining the slightly expanded gritting service that they provided last year. So that is being kept at the same level in terms of the roads that are being done. On the climate change strategy, you'll remember the county and districts have been working together to come up with a plan. The draft plan has been agreed and it's going to the full councils of all 5 authorities throughout November and December, with a plan that it will be adopted before the end of the year for implementation as and from next year. And on the One Somerset front, the unitary, we've had now the formal request for submission of the plans from the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick. That is, the business case is being worked up and that will be put before the full council again of the county and the districts of their 2 different plans. And those will both to be submitted to the Secretary of State before December the 9th. So there is still some consultation going on at the moment, but obviously from December the 9th, it then sits with the Secretary of State for him to make a decision, and that will probably be in the middle of next year before we know certainly what his recommendation will be, whether it will be 1 unitary, 2 unitaries, or something else. The feedback we've had in terms of North Somerset and Bath and North East Somerset is both were written to. both have replied saying they want to leave it for Somerset to get on with their own organisation, and they'll look at it afterwards as to whether they want to work in a combined authority, but they have no interest in becoming a unitary with the other parts of the current county of Somerset. On the district front, just one bit of news that came out actually today is the chief executive of Sedgemoor has decided that she's going to retire in the spring of next year. That's Alison Griffin. So she's been with Sedgemoor now for I think it's somewhere around 30 years employed with the authority, and she'll be taking her early retirement as of end of March next year. But happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Bob at all? No? Thank you, Bob. That's excellent. Can I just, who's got Malcolm on the line?
David.
Oh, David, well done. Thank you. Okay, footpaths. Who deals with footpaths?
Well, Cynthia, actually.
Yeah.
Well, she's not here, so
yeah,
David has things all.
Yeah. David, you got anything on footpaths, except that they are very muddy at the moment, but
yeah, I think generally just very muddy. I haven't really been about too much, so I can't give too much of an accurate description, but muddy from what I can make out.
Yeah. The old it's the, unfortunately we didn't get chance to do the Horsefield one because the weather turned on us, and the path on the right hand side of the water tanks adjacent to the sheep field is always dreadful, and that's we've never done much about that either, but they are two very bad paths. But we've got to wait now though, haven't we, David, till next year, I assume.
Yeah, I reckon it's going to be the spring realistically now, because there's no point trying to do anything when it's so wet, because you just make the problem a lot worse, really.
Yeah.
But you know, we might be able to do some of the gateways down towards the railway line if it happens to be frosty for a prolonged period. But I would say the Horsefield's probably a no for now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else got anything on footpaths? No? Okay. Let's move on to highways. Now, this is Malcolm, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. There's a cottage just before the RSPCA, and opposite there, the road has been badly repaired, and there is a rut that nearly caused a cyclist an accident.
Okay.
Okay. Can I also highlight the hill lane in the area just approaching the entrance to Ballcops Hall? There is subsidence in the middle of that lane. It's falling away from the centre, and the depth of it, the depth of the fall is getting worse. And again, if a cyclist should hit that coming down, they could well be in trouble. I don't know if you want to have a look at it, Malcolm, when you've got a moment.
Yes, I will do it.
Thank you.
Contact the council in the county if necessary.
Okay, Bob.
A couple of things just to report if I can. I was notified the other day, and I don't know whether Owen had it as well, that I think it's November the 7th, Rail Track or the Network Rail are coming out to inspect, I think, the railway bridge at Station Road and also Wick Lane. Basically, I think they're just doing an inspection of them. I did point out, I wrote back to them and said, if they're coming out to do those two, could they please have a look at the one at Crooked Lane, because the side of the valley is particularly poor. So they say they will try and add it to the list. And I've also flagged up to them the same thing that Owen's been chasing, which is the issue that I think David raised at the last meeting, where the new palisade fencing stops and they haven't done anything with the post and wire fence. So I've got a report number for those as well. So that's been hopefully underway. And just a couple of bits of gain, like you were mentioning, subsidence. I've reported to County Highways, Wick Lane, there's a very big area of subsidence into the Reen there that has gone down quite a long way, and similarly in Harp Road, or rather it's Vole Road off Harp Road, where there's a collapse of the Reen, and the road is sort of disappearing into it. So I had a reply back saying they've been out and inspected and should be looking at it shortly.
Excellent, thank you, Bob. Any more on highways? Okay, let's move on. Who did the green car park and toilet block? Who was that?
I believe it was Warwick, I think. It was Warwick.
Okay.
I haven't got a report from him, so I don't know whether he has done it or whether he hasn't. But,
okay.
Something which we perhaps the other thing is, of course, is that I think it's probably time now to reissue that list, because I think it's got a bit confused during the year, particularly in the current circumstances where we're perhaps not doing things in the sort of same way that we once were. So I perhaps need to reissue that, actually, just so everybody's aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who from your current schedule, who is it in theory next month? Owen?
Bob. I think it's Bob, actually. Yeah, I think it's Bob.
Can you bring us back into line then, Bob? And do it in so you'll do it ready
miracles
for.
Take a while, or Colin.
Yeah. Sorry.
Miracles take a while.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple of loaves. Yeah. So you'll present it then for our December meeting, Bob, please. Thank you. Okay. GB Sports, Owen.
GB Sports, I circulated their report about a week ago from them. There's nothing new on there other than the items that we were aware of. And of course, there's a couple of items that Paul Dixon is currently undertaking, particularly with regard to not so much GB Sports areas, but the benches and also the traverse chain on the trim trail.
Trim trail.
Brian, have you got any more on that?
You're on mute, Brian.
We can't hear you.
Was the lost post found?
Yes, David put it down the side of the village hall.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I haven't heard anything from Paul, Bob. I don't know whether how Paul's getting on with his various bits and pieces. Is he?
No,
I know you tend to communicate a bit with him. And
I can chase him up on that, particularly if I'm doing the inspection down there. It will give me a chance to follow it up.
Okay.
He's been down and done the traverse chain.
Oh,
he
done
did it last week. Yeah, after you located the post.
Right. Okay. One of the things we're on the agenda, as is for later, so I won't elaborate on it. But obviously, the health and safety issue needs to come up. But we've got a separate item on the agenda for that.
Okay. Police crime speed watch SID updates, pre-circulated crime report.
Yeah.
Item G, Owen.
Basically, the Gina Powers note you had from her about the speed watch, I circulated about 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether anybody had a chance to make any comments. She was hoping to get along tonight, actually, but unable to do so. So any comments that we can offer her, I think would be welcome on that report. So I don't know anybody has got any points to make on it. Not too many by the looks of it.
I think from the tone of the letter to us is she's querying the statement of density of population, failing to move the 30 mile an hour and then make a move to try and get it to 40 mile an hour.
Yeah.
I don't know where legally you stand on that and how they decide between 30 and 40, but if the parish council or the parish feel that it's a dangerous road, surely there's a case of some description to be had there.
I'm just reading the note for again. Forgive me, Andy.
If I might, Colin, just to comment on that, in terms of when the 30 got put in there, it basically stopped where it did because at the time the regulation was similar to what they're saying now, which is if you have fewer dwellings within a certain run of the road, then they don't normally extend the speed limit over that. Now, at the moment, the lady who came out and actually met us on site, Catherine, is sympathetic, to be honest, to what we're trying to achieve. And we've now had the police write in and support as well. So Catherine has taken it up with her superiors to basically say, look, I know that the policy says this, but in this case, it actually does make sense to extend the 30. So she's hopeful, but obviously she's got to persuade her superiors to in effect go against their standard policy, but to justify it. So hopefully we're getting there, but it has been a bit of a push.
Okay, can we keep this as a live issue then, Bob, and then you just come back to us? Okay, John, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, one small point. Mary Cole, who's on the speed watch team, she came yesterday and collected the old camera which Roger Ward used to use, and I think she's got some organisation with the police perhaps to exchange it. Anyway, the old camera is now gone.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just minute that so that because it's actually on our asset register at the moment. So I'll just minute that to say that it's been returned.
Was that our, just a matter of interest, was that our new camera? Because we did get a new one a couple of years ago. So, and we had an old one before that. So have both cameras now gone?
Yes. Yes. So that
the camera I had was the last camera Roger Ward had.
Yes.
That was our new one then, I think.
The new one.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever.
All right. So they're both gone.
For which we did receive a grant from the police on that one anyway.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
I think £1,000 or something. Yeah.
Okay.
The Mary Cole said that there was some perhaps arrangement that they could exchange it for something new. I don't know.
Okay. Thanks, John. Anything else on that particular item? Anybody?
It's already on the agenda, of course, later on.
Yes. Okay. Next item was update on the village shop. Well, I think you've there's nothing else to report really. I don't know if you want to add to that, Bob, but as a result of the last meeting, if you remember, I did send out the bullet points that we all highlighted that we needed to look at if we are to undertake a role as a landlord, and obviously those will click in once we know where we are. But Bob, do you want to add anything to that?
I think only in following up what I mentioned earlier, that obviously we've been in touch with the mortgage company who have the mortgage at the shop at the moment, because there was some concern as to whether they were prepared to see the shop sold separately from the building. That looks like that's been resolved, but they have come back, as I say, and said they obviously want an independent valuation, which, to be frank, we would need anyway. They are going to come back to us with some quotes for getting an independent valuation for companies that they're happy for us to do that with. And it may well be that we need, as a council, to obviously have a meeting at some point in the future to decide whether we're happy to pay the cost that they're going to be getting as an estimate. But that's something we can only cross that bridge when we get to it. So as soon as I've got any further information, I'll feed that back through the clerk, and it may well be that we'll need to have an interim meeting at some point.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any questions of Bob at all? Okay. Correspondence, Owen?
Nothing other than that I circulated.
Okay.
And of course, these days we don't get the correspondence that we used to get. It all goes by email now. So
okay.
In a way, that makes life somewhat easier. In some respects, it makes life easier. What I have to be very mindful of, though, is keeping hard copies. I tend to try and keep hard copies of emails, certainly from residents anyway. Yeah.
Thank you, Owen. Okay, finance, Owen.
Basically, the statutory payments are as the 187.19 minute of the 24th of March. So the regular payments to Jason, to GB Sports, Clark Salary, etc., are all as before. We have one new payment to Sedgemoor District Council for the dog bin emptying and the cleaning of the toilet block. This is a twice yearly invoice, and a total of 1,368, including some VAT there. And so we just need approval to make that payment, really.
Would somebody like to propose that? Andy would propose. John second, or John, do you want to say something, or are you seconding it?
Can't hear you, John.
No, fine. All right.
You're fine. Okay. So Andy's proposed it. John seconded it. All those in favour that this paid? Thank you.
Just one small point just worth mentioning is, and this is the trouble when you do training courses. I understand that we don't actually now need to have a seconder. A proposer and then a vote is sufficient.
Oh, okay.
So it just makes life easier and cleaner, actually.
Okay. Thank you.
Just as a small point.
Thank you. Okay. Budget proposal precept. Owen circulated a budget. I don't know if anyone's come back to you at all, Owen, or
haven't seen anything from anybody. I have, obviously, I can share the screen with anybody if they wish to see it. I've got it, I think, on share screen. Just a few points to it, really. Clearly, the first sheet that you had on the document that I sent was the budget, and that's basically the budget that we set for this year. It's where we've actually arrived to date, and where I expect we'll end up at the end of the financial year. So in the black is our budget, the red is to date, the blue is to the end of the year forecast, and the proposal is the right-hand column based on those figures. And it's the right-hand column, of course, that you as members can change, because if you want to spend more in some areas or less in others, that, of course, is very much your prerogative to do so. And then that budget is carried forward onto the calculation sheet. And I think, as I explained in my email to you, there's only a couple of things that we can change. One of the things we can change, obviously, is the budget headings and the amounts in those headings. We can also change our reserves, whether we want it for 6 months, 9 months, or a year. The current figures are based on 6 months. And if you drop down to the bottom line, that means that we'd be asking for a precept at 34,000 approximately for the forthcoming year. That's if we didn't change anything. So we didn't change the budget. We don't change the reserve requirement. And the one thing that I've also done is put the £10,000 COVID grant into our fixed reserves separately. So we don't include them in our calculations, because obviously we don't want to obviously use them as part of our general funding of the council. It's meant to be for a specific community, really a project, which the shop may ultimately end up being part of that project. So any questions I'm happy to answer.
Just to,
Yes, please.
Quick, yeah, Brian, go on, crack on.
The COVID grant is £10,000, you said?
That's right.
What, as we as a council, are we likely to spend it on? What is it designated for?
Well, the idea was that anybody who was qualified for business rating, that includes councils and commercial businesses, qualified for this £10,000 grant that we applied for. Now, okay, we don't actually pay business rates, but the toilet block is business rateable. It just so happens that we get a nil fee. Is there a term for it, Bob? I think, isn't there?
Yes, it's just that the Sedgemoor has a policy on those buildings that we don't levy the business rate. So in effect, it's offset by the district. But as you say, we're still registered, and that's why we qualified.
But it hasn't got any specific requirements on it in the same way that, say, SIL has. So it can be used for any project that the council feel is appropriate.
I'm finding it difficult to think of what it might be spent on.
How about the shop, Brian?
Well, yeah, of course. But apart from that, yeah.
Well, I think that, and my feeling, and I'll put this out to others, I think if we're going to go for the shop, then we go for the shop and we use all available finances and resources to make it all happen. If the shop does not go, then everything goes into the pot, and we can look at play equipment. We could look at extra assets for the village in some way. But at the moment, I think we've identified that we need to sort out where we are with the shop. When we know where we are with the shop, then we'll know, we can look at what money we've got available. Yeah.
The thing is, Brian.
Yeah, Andy.
Sorry, Andy. Go on.
Go on, Andy.
Just a question coming from a different background to you guys. It seems to me this is basically a P&L, yeah, cash flow statement. If we take our cash and let's talk about our legal costs, which will cost us a few thousand, plus the purchase price about 30,000, we deplete our revenue stream to a level. Is the council happy to continue running at that level, or are we prepared to move from a 6 months to a 3 months safety barrier?
Good question. And I think probably maybe the finance committee should look at that, Owen.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you know, there are so much resort. I mean, obviously the SIL fund obviously has to be used for a community benefit, of which the shop would be a community benefit. So the SIL fund does give our finances quite a boost, actually. And were it not for the shop, then we'd be looking for some other form of community benefit that would qualify for using the SIL money on. And to some extent, I suppose you could argue the same with the COVID fund. You know, I'm sure the community would be appreciative of any benefit that we could give the community for that COVID fund. If we popped it into the normal reserve, our precept, yes, would be lower, unquestionably. Our precept would be lower, but since the precept is a very small part of the total, I mean, the average D-rated property is a minuscule amount of the local taxpayers' tax take, so to speak, that really wouldn't make any significant difference. But it does make a significant difference if you want to put it into a community benefit. So I think it's a question how councillors feel about, you know, they've got a fund there of money. Do they want to use it for, and it comes back to Brian's point, general funding of the council, or do they want to set it aside and say, look, actually, this is a bit of a bonus in a way, a bit of a windfall. Should we use it to benefit the community in some other way? And that's really the decision for the council, really, I guess, at the end of the day.
Andy.
The question was just to raise it because you've got a healthy bank balance at the moment. If we go through with the desired spend, we wouldn't have a healthy bank balance. So it's really a question on how the council wants to sit on and use that. That was the question. How it's used, I'm not questioning. I'm just talking about the fact the bottom right hand number looks quite healthy. If we make the purchase, it will look less healthy.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we should do our own financial plan then as to how it's going to affect our finances. But I think Owen's, I haven't got that little sheet in front of me, but he's given us a sheet whereby he indicates where the funds are coming from.
there's a variety. There are basically only really three forms of income the council can get, really. One is from precept, one is from seal, and one is from other inward grants. Because bear in mind, we do get another grant each year from the Wick Solar Farm. Excuse me, I'm just plugging in. Yeah, the Wick Solar Farm, we're on a 5-year, £2,000 a year grant arrangement with them. And I've just sent an invoice for this year's, and that's another £2,000 that we'll be getting in. So we don't get our income sources from anywhere else. It's either grants, whether it be SIL or whether it be some other form of grant, or it's from precept. There's no other means of income for the council. We have no commercial interests. Bob wants to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to somewhat also answer Andy. In terms of our reserves, obviously, there have been occasions in the past where we've had big projects where we've in effect depleted reserves, and then over a period of years we've then built them back up again. The one advantage we have as a local authority is our bulk of our income comes from the precept, which is obviously paid to us by Sedgemoor District Council, and so we would be in it would be a very difficult world if we don't get that, because it would mean the district council has got severe financial problems. So we are pretty much guaranteed that income. It's not quite in the same way as a business needing to have those reserves because they don't know what's coming. We are pretty much guaranteed that income. It's just there for a major issue that crops up to ensure that we've got that sort of fallback. So it's not quite as critical as for the sort of a business cash flow, because we're more guaranteed with our income.
I understand.
Okay, Owen, what would you like to do then?
I mean, basically, we don't need to make a decision at this meeting on the precept. The December meeting would be perfectly okay. We always tend to go in fairly early with our precept, because I think it's only fair on the finance department of Sedgemoor that they get our precept request in reasonably good time, sort of early January. I know some councils leave it till sort of February and drag on a bit, and it's unfortunate because it makes their job harder. I think if we've made a pretty clear decision by December, I think that's good enough, and we can go for a precept figure. So come December meeting, we need to decide what we want to go for in terms of our precept figure. At the moment, I'm saying that at 34,000, which is about 1,000 up on this year, I think, at 34,000, it represents a very marginal, very tiny increase, but does cover us for everything that we've got in our budget, plus our reserve, including our reserves. So all I would urge you to do is just check those right-hand columns again on the budget to make sure that we've covered everything that you think we should cover on the budget. I mean, for example, we've got special projects in there again at 5,000. That may be sufficient, it may not be sufficient, depending on what projects you think we may want to undertake next year. This year, the special projects included the fencing on the green. So when we did that significant job back along on the green, that came out of our special projects fund for this year. So there was a case in point there. We'd set £5,000 as a budget, and we've used 6124. So that was fairly close to what we set originally. So, do you want to set another 5,000 for next year in the budget for special projects? Or don't you think we'll have any, in which case we don't need to set it as a budget? So, it's these sort of things that you need to decide as councillors, really. I'm only putting them there as proposals. They're not, yours is a decision. You set the precept, I don't. I just give you the budget figures for you to be able to base your decisions on. So in time for the December meeting, if you have got any areas on the proposal on the right-hand column that you feel should be changed, then of course we can change them at the December meeting.
Okay. can I ask then that now you've got the proposal from Owen, that you go back to him directly with any questions or any additions you might like to make. I mean, I was just concerned about training fees if we have to do more. I think it was Schedule D training if we have another SID. Room hire fees may well have to go up to £700, which we had budgeted for. Owen, I assume that public conveniences includes the dog bins as well.
It does.
Yeah.
That public, no, actually it doesn't. No, the public conveniences does not include dog bins. Comes under general maintenance. So I split the amount I get from Sedgemoor. I split into two parts: general maintenance and public conveniences.
Oh, okay.
So the public convenience charges are primarily the 2 annual payments for the cleaning contract. They're the 2 biggies, which is about £1,500. And on top of that, you've got Wessex Water, water rates, and energy, plus any other expenditure.
Okay.
But the dog bin emptying fee is under general maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd certainly like to keep the special projects in place, because I think we should have some money in our back pocket, because we always get jobs that need to be done. I mean, I assume that we had some money that we put aside from the Nuttall Trust, didn't we, for David's work? Are we keeping that to one side, Owen?
Well, we had some money from Nuttall Trust, of course, which we paid for the bench earlier in the year. We had the new picnic bench, and that fund was used for the purchase of that bench on the green.
I thought I put in for a piece of play equipment. That was the year before. We put in for a piece of play equipment and it got rejected, but they gave me £500.
£500, yeah, which I had down actually towards the bench. I must admit, it can be changed. It's only a very easily changeable figure. It's only moving amounts against figures, but I mean, that was what I had down this year. I had it for the bench.
Okay. Well, as long as we've got the money for it,
the money's definitely there. It's in the fund, because if you look under inwards grants, in fact, actually the £500 came in last year's financials, not this year's.
Okay.
It was in February, March time. It wasn't in April.
Okay.
So that was in last year's income.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Owen on the precept? Okay, that's smashing, thank you. Matters for decision. A final resolution on the new dog bin. We were concerned as to who owns the right of way in the path opposite the tennis courts.
I contacted the Berries and spoke to Mrs. Berry, and they asked her what her opinion was, and she would consider it. But after a few days, she came back to me and definitely said no, they didn't want it there. But nobody wants it, of course, do they? But,
no.
The only other thing I can think of is that we could fix it to the front of the gents' toilet there. But I can't think of anywhere else we could put it.
I don't know what anybody else feels about that. I mean, we don't allow dogs on the green or near the green anyway. No. So unless we put one in an entirely different area of the village. But that area was an area of concern, if you remember, for people. Okay.
Can it go sorry, can it go next to the waste bin? Because there's a waste bin down from there as well as by the apple tree and the bench.
Oh, but what, by the village green?
Yeah.
I think we better go back to square one, Brian, and have another look.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Bob wants to say something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Was only going to suggest whether we could look at the site opposite the school again as to whether that's feasible.
Was because there was one right by the school, wasn't there, originally? And then we moved that, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
But was there one opposite there then?
Well, just beyond the school, you've got the where the old bus stop used to be. There was the bin there that caused the issue when that was removed. But there is further towards the village hall, there is a wider verge without a close boundary to it, which might be possible. But it might be if we could maybe have a look at it and then feed back to the parish and see what the options are.
All right. Well, shall we go and have a look at it, Brian?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so Brian and I will go and have a look then. All right.
You'll give me a ring, will you? You'll give me a ring?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will. Yeah. Okay. Health and safety. Owen, do you want to lead on this one?
Yeah, just one of the things that, and having had quite a few meetings with other clerks of late, it's very clear to me that it's a gaping hole in our sort of documentation that we don't have a professionally produced health and safety risk assessment and policy statement and report. Now, I know that we talked about this about a year ago. I think Nigel, you and Andrea and Warwick sort of we had a bit of a chat about it. The general view is it's not a good idea for councillors to undertake it simply because of the liability that potentially can come from it. In other words, that it is better to be done by a professional organisation to protect the council rather than, as what many councils have done in the past, is somebody from the parish council perhaps has been involved in health and safety and they've taken it on. But the liability factor comes in if there is a problem. And it's whether anybody on the council wants to be really taken in by that liability, really. I think that's what it comes down to. The quote I had from Atlas do several parish and town councils in the area, and they do a complete package, significantly less expensive than the one we got last year. If you remember rightly, the one we came back with last year was quite expensive. It was about £1,400, which did seem a bit excessive. This one is a sort of sub £300 service, and of course, not only do they produce the risk assessments and the reports, but they also have an ongoing support telephone line as well. So if you have any issues, you've got somebody you can phone up and say, actually, what do we do about this or that? So if you have somebody who makes a claim, or you've got somebody you can speak to other than your insurance company. So it does make sense to have that professional element to what we do. But again, it's a matter for members. I don't know whether Nigel has anything to say on that, because obviously I know that you kindly offered to do something with Andrew and Warwick on it.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Owen. First of all, you're right. We discussed this over a year ago, and I think I did put forward or share with you a health and safety policy with regards to the village green. With regards to an overarching policy for the council, no, that's not been done. With regards to professionalism, for sure. I mean, it's what I do for bread and butter. It's my job. I am a practicing occupational health and safety professional, registered, and I do have liability insurance. However, saying that, it's been 12 months. We've moved no further than we have when we first had the discussion. And I think with regards to myself being in full-time employment, it becomes very challenging to put the dedication and commitment that's required under that topic for this council. So I'm more than happy to support this proposal with regards to outsourcing to a professional outfit. I would, however, like to be sort of like close to this with working with that company to review documents, review assessments, and review any requirements that we request.
Nigel, that's brilliant, and I think your comments are well received on that. I would support your comments. I think it's important that that you have acknowledged that if you're working, notwithstanding you're a professional, that you're working all the hours people send you these days, and so's Andrew and Warwick. It's very difficult to put the time in, and I would deem it great if we went with these people, but you also though took a watching brief over it together with Owen on our behalf, and I think that would be a really good step forward. So thank you, Nigel. I would propose, Bob.
You were proposing. I was happy to second it.
Oh, okay.
Was just going to ask one question if I could, Colin. It was just the first quote we had was massive compared with this. I just wanted to get Nigel's opinion as to the quote that we've got, this 350 plus VAT or with a discount. Is that a sort of a sensible amount that you'd expect to be seeing?
When I read the quote, I did challenge what service are we actually receiving here, and to what sort of like quality of service. Hence why I said I'd like to be quite close with this to see what service they're providing. If it's a case of they just look at the policy and sign it off and say, yeah, no need to update that without sort of like any consultation with anybody within the council, then that provides an issue. And then obviously I'd like to see the level of not competency, but quality of the risk assessments that they would submit.
Yeah. Owen,
should they meet up with, perhaps we can arrange for the Atlas, the actual principal of Atlas, who I spoke to, for him to meet up with yourself.
Definitely.
For him to explain to you what you've just said, you know, what the credentials are, what's the full remit of what they're being asked to do, and what qualifications they have in a way, I suppose. Almost.
Okay. Owen, one question: how many years do we have to enter into a contract with them for?
We don't.
We don't. So we can do it annually, see what we get, and then is it good or is it bad? And Nigel can steer us.
The only reference point there is that I was having a long chat with David Mears, who's the town clerk at Bridgewater, and David is an absolute stickler for getting things right. And he's used them, and he was extremely complimentary about their level of service, which coming from David was a good thing. But you know, they are a town council; they have different requirements than what we have as a parish council. So it's important, Nigel, that you know someone like yourself can get a chance to examine them a bit as well.
Yeah, more than happy. Just reach out to me or link me up with them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Nigel. Okay, I've made the proposal. Bob has seconded it. Can we take a vote on that, please? Is Malcolm okay with that? Oh, yeah, 2 hands from David. Brilliant. Thank you. Well done.
Okay.
Monthly meeting schedule. Owen?
Yes, I circulated about 2 weeks ago now. Just wanted to make sure everybody was happy with the meeting schedule. It's something which we should be doing obviously each year. There's no surprises in there, there's no changes in there. It's the first Wednesday of the month for main meetings and second Wednesday of the month for provisionals, in addition to the annual parish meeting, which may or may not take place next year, who knows. So just really to get a resolution to approve, that's all. That you're happy with things as they are.
So are we happy then with Owen's schedule of meetings? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sid, I haven't spoken to the lawyer for SDC. Owen, have you got an update on where he is with that at all?
He's currently drafting in fact, I think he has drafted the second letter. And as you know, we had a little brief look at it. He set some sort of initial parameters on what he was going to say to them. And I think we just wait now and see what their response to the second letter is, actually. We've asked for a refund. I'm surprised. I'm sort of thinking, are they going to come back to us now and make us an offer and say, we're not going to give you the whole refund, but we'll give you X, Y, Z. You know, I might give you 2/3 or 80% of it or whatever. They haven't done that yet. I mean, I'm fully expecting that they will at some point.
You know what they say, delay is the deadliest form of denial.
Right, yeah.
Sorry.
I think notwithstanding that, though, we ought to get on and look at a new unit, which Bob reminded me about, and he's given us details of one particular supplier that looks good, and we'll look at another one, and we'll start the process of seeking to identify a more suitable unit. There was some talk going about East Brent not having enough people interested in moving their SID. Is there an update there at all?
Well, what's happened at East Brent, of course, they've had SIDs in place for a good couple of years now, several, in fact, 3 or 4 years, I think. What they have found is they've had some difficulty in maintaining people to actually move the thing around. I think that's right, Bob, isn't it? They've had a little bit of sort of logistical problem with manpower. And as a result of that, they've decided to either sell their SIDs off, or perhaps one suggestion has come into partnership with Brent Knoll so that we can share resources with them. I'm not sure how we feel about that. I mean, you know, sharing manpower resources and presumably financial resources as well, I guess, because they will want the units purchased, I guess. Is that the gist of it, Bob? Is that sort of as I get it from Jim Murray? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting concept. Of course, we've been very lucky because we've had Richard Ibrahim to do ours for us. So we've never had to worry about charging the battery. We've never had to worry about taking it down and resiting it and putting new batteries in. It is a disciplined activity, and Richard's done that on our behalf. We've been exceedingly lucky. And it might well be that, you know, as councillors, it becomes part of our monthly duty to charge the batteries and reposition this unit, because we can't rely on Richard forever. So I think probably we look at new units and we consider what the best thing is to do. Have we had a formal approach from East Brent?
Yes, we have. I mean, Jim Murray wrote the email I circulated the other day was suggesting that possibly we might be able to have maybe a joint Zoom meeting with a couple of councillors from East Brent and a couple of councillors from our council that can sort of decide how that would work, because we don't really know what the detail of what they're proposing is. So I think it would be a good idea for a couple of members to go on with a Zoom meeting with a couple of East Brent members and have a chat about the mechanics of it.
I'm happy to talk to them. Would anybody else like to join me and find out more about it, Bob? That would be good. Andrew or Nigel, yeah. So let's set something up whereby we talk to them and see what their suggestion is. The only thing is they won't be interested in Brent Street. They'll only be interested in Burton Row, which of course is a key road. So it may well be that we're just moving it up and down Burton Row. I noticed the ones that were by the Pink Time Cottage have now gone. So they must have been gathering statistics, is my guess. But we do need some form of speed device, definitely.
I can't remember. Somebody told me about, and I can't remember, Bob, you may be able to throw some light on it. Somebody mentioned about somebody, and it might have been one of our clerks' meetings, and I think it possibly was now I think about it, said that they got somebody locally who was a very great enthusiast for these things and was offering councils a service to be able to provide the provision to move them around, get the data, send it on to the council for a set fee. Am I right about that, Bob? Or did I dream that up?
No, it was me that passed it on to you, Owen.
Right.
Basically, what it was, Colin, was that the two that materialised on Burton Row were organised by the police, but they didn't actually put them up. They had a local contractor in effect who does it for them. Now, apparently, he also does it for, I believe, Barrow Parish Council. And basically what he does is he puts them up, he moves them around to set locations, he does the recharging of the batteries, and for Barrow, he downloads all the statistics and then passes it on to them. So for a fee,
brilliant,
he could do that. So
book him now.
What I'll do is when we have the discussion, I'll bring the details along. So again, that's something else we can put into the pot.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's Nigel wanted to be involved, Andy wanted to be involved, yourself, Bob, me. Owen, are you going to be involved in it?
I'll get involved in it.
Does anyone else want to be involved in it? John, Brian, David? No? Okay, so we'll make sure that Owen links us all up for a chat with them. But if you've got more information on this contractor, I think he would be our answer to our prayer and everybody else's prayers.
Sounded a great contact, that one did.
Yeah, and he may know more about speed indicator devices than anybody, hopefully. Yeah, okay, brilliant.
And of course, we would get some data, which we're not getting at the moment. I mean, the whole point about these things is to have good data.
Okay. Okay. Are there any newsworthy items? I don't think so, but please nudge me if you feel there are. No? Okay. Matters of report then, ready for the next meeting. Let's go round. Brian, anything?
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, start off with an apology. I've realised today I've forgotten to go and check the timer at behind the toilet, so I will try and get that done. But I believe I need a code number, don't I?
17. Oh, yeah.
Don't tell everybody.
John. Yeah, we'll
send me an email.
We'll email it to you. Right. John, can you remember what it is?
Oh, it might be.
It's all right. Will you email it to Brian, please?
No, we don't need to. 1712.
No.
So now we'll be wanting to change it.
Yeah.
You'll definitely want to change it now.
Yeah.
You say 1712, John?
Yeah. Don't tell him, Pike. Okay, anything else, Brian?
Yeah, last meeting we had Duncan talking about 2 Brent Street, and this has come up personally for me because my son and his family have had an offer accepted on a house in Station Road. It's the one on the corner of the lane there, and they've got 2 children, 8 and 4, and they wanted to get them into the local school here, but apparently it's full, and it's full because there are 90% of the children come from outside Brent Knoll. That's why we get so many vehicles there. And I was thinking, well, if these people moving into this to Brent Street, if they've got a family, they might well have the same problem. And it means now that my son is really considering whether it's worth actually moving there, which is very upset. Well, it's disappointing. I just thought perhaps you ought to know about it. It's nothing to do with council really, but it's a general feeling in the village. And I know there's another family in Church Lane who've got children and they can't get them into the school a couple of 100 yards away. I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that.
Well, you don't surprise me with those comments. and the new houses will.
It's nothing to do with it. It's nothing to do with the headmaster. He's powerless, really, in that sense. It's just the system, and I think there should be much more flexibility, certainly for local people. I mean, having 90% outside is to me, it's crazy.
Is it our role, Bob, that we should inquire from the headmaster what his policy will be in the future, or what it is now in terms of numbers and local children?
I don't want to stir it up here because
I can certainly raise it with county, because I mean that is part of the theory behind having the new houses built, is that you will end up with new families coming in here, and then they will bring less people in from outside. But I will ask what they're doing about that over the next couple of years, because that's something we do need to know about.
I don't want to just sort of think it's anything to do with the head teacher. He's powerless in that sense. He has to, I believe, if they want.
No, but I think, I think you've voiced a very real problem, and it could become more because we want to encourage young families to.
And if children have to go to another school outside the village, they're not socialising with the children in the village, are they?
Yeah, it's bonkers.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you. That's
okay.
all.
Thanks, Brian. David?
No, nothing from me.
Anything from Malcolm?
No, nothing from me.
Okay. John?
Oh, thank you.
No. Andy?
Thank you.
No. Nigel? No. Bob?
Just a couple of things, if I could, Chairman. One thing was just to ask Owen, have we had any feedback about the gas box and the posts that we were going to try and get the gas people to replace, because they haven't done any repair works there yet, and we just need to make sure we do it while they're still in the village. On a similar matter, I've sent a slightly more stroppy email to Royal Mail about the missing post box down on Burton Row, because there's still no sign of that materialising. And originally they told me it would be 25 weeks. Well, that was more than 25 weeks ago. So I have sent a slightly more stroppy email to them.
Okay.
And the third thing was just a comment to ask members to maybe put some publicity out there. Bakersfield is the development that's going to come on Station Road. I've been sent through some correspondence that, as you know, in the last couple of Brent Knoll Newses, there's been items in there from the developers and from Willow Tree highlighting that there are properties there for people who are local. Now, as you know from those reports, they have allocated one of the shared ownership ones, and they've just, in the last month or so, had another opportunity for people to get involved and register for shared ownership. Now, the feedback I've had is they had a lot of people interested, and none of them were from the village. So if we don't have something happen, they're going to be looking at allocating in December the final of the shared ownership property. And as yet, local residents aren't putting their names forward. And of course, they can't allocate to someone locally if local people don't put their information through. So people do need to follow up with Willow Tree and make sure they've put their information in on particularly the shared ownership. The rental will come up later, but the shared ownership is the one that is in danger of not being dealt with locally, simply because local people aren't in the running.
Should this be a newsworthy item that we put on burnhamondsea.com or something like that, or in our own section on Nextdoor, for instance?
Yeah, because it's a boat that people are going to miss if they're not careful.
Yeah.
Owen, I'll put something on Nextdoor. I'll put something on Nextdoor.
Oh, okay, Andy.
I agree, and I think as the council, surely we've got to see if we can get some of our people into those properties, because it will make it easier should we have to go through other developments further down the years that our people actually benefit from this. So maybe on this occasion we do more than just put it on Nextdoor, which doesn't have a massive take up if you look at the numbers. But is there something else we can do in the local vicinity to let all the families know that this facility is open to them? Because it's been hard fought and won by the council for them, and maybe some of them still don't know. and it's not really in the interest of the two parties that own it to make sure that one of our people take it. Not really. So I think, do we take it on to another level? Do we put posters up? It'll cost us very little, but I think in a PR way, it'll give us a big kudos if the village is seen for us to get people into those properties.
Following on from what Andy said, Bob, are there people, local people, that applied to SDC for social housing that weren't accommodated?
Yes, I mean, Sedgwell has been passing on the contact details of those who registered in the survey so that they could be contacted, but that's not been followed up. Now, obviously, if you remember, when we did the survey, the majority actually wanted rental, not shared ownership.
Shared ownership.
And so a lot of those people have gone for the rental. And as you know, as we heard last time, it was oversubscribed at the Orchard Grove, and there will be others who will be able to go for the rentals at the other end. But the shared ownership is more of a problem.
Yes, sorry, I thought of rental rather than shared ownership, which is an entirely different scenario, isn't it? It's difficult, Andy. I'm not sure, but I think probably let's start with next door. Let's start with something on burnhamondsea.com to make local people aware that they do have one, it's shared ownership, but they do have an opportunity to apply now. I think that's all we can do, Bob.
And certainly the details, if anyone can pass it on to anyone that they know as well, all the contact details are in the last 2 Brent Knoll Newses. The article's been in there from Willow Tree asking people to come forward, and they can only offer what people come forward. So
okay, all right, okay. And there's nothing from me, so I think that's it then. Now we've covered everything. Thank you all.
I'll stop the meeting when you say so.
Sorry, Owen?
I'll stop the recording when you tell me to.
Well, yeah, we can stop now.